Hello and welcome to Professional Relationship Manager Podcast, and I'm your host, Kurt Phelps, and we have a wonderful guest today, John Lombardi, who is the VP GM of Samsung, focusing, I believe, on the Verizon relationship. Welcome, John, to our podcast.
Thank you, Kurt. Glad to be here. Good morning.
Morning. So, John, it's funny. I'm looking at your personal website here. And we'll start with things right off the bat, because I think your front page of your website's great. Looks like it's you and your son racing motocross bikes. Is that a hobby?
It's we don't do it as often as I'd like, but it was actually a father-son trip down to Baja, Mexico, with another father and son, and we had a professional riding group that took us down and went on sections of the actual Baja 500/1000 raceway, and stopped at a bunch of really cool locations. And it was just 4 or 5 days of just a lot of fun and adventure. And we had great Mexican tour guides who actually former racers in the race who knew the territory. We obviously weren't going at race speeds. It was just kind of fun, kind of play riding in the desert, variety of conditions, but still pretty technically challenging. So my son and I mountain bike every once in a while. Don't get on the motorcycles very much because New Jersey is just too densely populated. But it was a great experience. And the other father and son were folks we met actually on the trip. We're actually from Israel, and they were remarking how similar in some cases, some places, the Baja was to sections in Israel they rode on out in the farms and the dirt and everything and the hills. So it was a great experience. It was just amazing.
So I have to be honest. Everyone here, I've known John for a few years now, and I never knew he raced motocross bikes or was really the mountain biking guy you are today until you built, your personal website. So I thought that was really interesting. It was stuff. I came from a small town, so it's stuff that I did, especially motocross biking and stuff when I was younger. So it's interesting to find how we've known each other for a bunch of years, and we have some common bonds in certain ways besides just the the high-tech world. So I thought it was cool to see you and how you experience the motocross world, which is super cool, I think.
Kind of fun to get dirty every once in a while.
Yeah, isn't it right? So first, John's had an absolute fantastic career. So from AT&T to Lucent to Motorola to Nokia to Mobility, and now at Samsung. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, your career a little bit and the progression that you've gone through. And then we'll talk a little bit about, as a hiring manager, some of the things that you look for and the processes you use to find, great talent. Why don't we start a little bit with, tell me, kind of give the audience a little bit of overview of your career. And I see that you went to, Rutgers, and actually, first off, you went Boston University to begin with. Mm-hmm. And then you went off to Rutgers. Tell me a little bit about, your career and the choices you made and how you progressed from, looks like your first job maybe was AT&T here, and how you got to be at Samsung today.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think it's been an amazing kind of journey, and it's still underway. I think when I was young, I mean, I wouldn't say I was super career minded, although in some ways I was. I definitely wanted to have a job that mattered, versus something that I thought just wasn't important. So when I came out of school, I liked the notion of being a so-called product manager, where you would lead the efforts to bring a product to market, the upfront definition of it, bring it to market, manage the life cycle. And then, that allowed opportunities to actually then lead, cross-functional teams with R&D and marketing and, sales and technical support, and assume more of a leadership role for that, and bring, teams together to get things done, which I just found to be a lot of fun, a lot of the problem solving, and then going out there and finding a way to increase sales and things like that. So some of it, you feel like you kind of stumble into some things. I went over to wireless very early in my career because I liked the notion of the time. I thought it was kind of cool that you had car phones and you could actually talk to people while you were on the go. And they were forming a new division in AT&T Network Systems at the time. And I said, yeah, I definitely want to try that out. It seems like it's much more of a fast moving kind of progressive kind of team that's being formed, and wanted to try out my product management marketing over there. So I went over to wireless in the early days back in '89, and then took advantage of really the wave. I mean, the wireless industry, as you know, just exploded right from into the '90s, And it was just tremendous opportunity compared to other aspects in telecoms at the time. So, I was afforded great opportunities to take on bigger roles, different types of roles, live and work overseas, and, get my MBA, while I was working, sponsored by the company, which I'll always be, appreciative of. Had a great experience getting the MBA and kind of applying my work experience to that. And then you reach a point, you've had a great run and you've been there for a while, but you start to think about what else do you need to do to kind of develop your career and learn and grow. And there were opportunities for several years to move over to Motorola and try a different company out. And at the time, it felt like a huge leap because I'd always been either with AT&T or Lucent, for most of my career. And they had treated me extremely well, got promoted multiple times, the whole bit. But, it was more opportunity driven. It was like, okay, I have a chance to go to Motorola, transition from kind of wireless infrastructure over towards mobile devices, learn a completely different kind of business that's more of a consumer electronics focused business, but still has telecoms and technology and applications and retail and merchandising. And it just seemed like it would be a great experience to learn and develop. And then also, lead an account, in this case, Verizon Wireless. Prior to that, when I transitioned from kind of product management to sales, it was for smaller kind of portfolio accounts. So a chance to kind of get back into the big game, account wise, and then learn a whole new business.
I think you were a part of, John, weren't you a part of the big Razor? Wasn't that the big hit days when the Motorola Razor came out?
Yeah, I actually joined Motorola right at the kind of the peak of kind of the Razor phenomena. And it was an exciting time. I mean, we were moving millions of units per quarter of Razor feature flip phones, and then doing all the color spins and special editions and all kinds of stuff. But back to the product management experience, a number of us were like, how long is this Razor phenomena going to last? And don't we need something that's a bit more purpose built, and segment and marketing driven for our customer to meet a bunch of needs, like messaging starting to take off. And so yeah, I went over there kind of late in the game on that, and then we got the team rallied around like a purpose driven portfolio for our customer. We were the first ones to do that, actually, and it was very basic. It was like 4 devices, but they were aimed at specific retail price points, specific segments of the market. And it was actually, that approach was well received by our customer at the time. So it led to a whole new set of opportunities and growth. A little scary coming off the Razor, the Razor train, but we got there right at the good time. Before the whole thing just, started to plummet very rapidly because the markets and the needs and the consumer attitude started to shift. That led to the transition to Android and the Droid franchise that was hugely successful at Verizon as a competitor offset to not having the iPhone at the time. And that was a whole amazing experience. And forming a real partnership with a customer and helping them compete and helping them attract new business and offset a huge competitive threat. So it's pretty amazing experience.
Did you through your career here, in most of your transitions from AT&T to Lucent and Motorola in the early days, how did you make those job changes? How did you find those jobs? What was your typical process when it was time to make a move and, to find that new company or that new position?
I was fortunate to have, it was limited, but I'd say a strong network of supporters who would reach out to me periodically with opportunities. I would reach out to them, compare notes. I actually had several opportunities to go over to Motorola before I actually went, but they just weren't the right opportunity in my mind in terms of, some of them were continuing on in a product management role or a finance role, but I was pretty focused on what I wanted. It was more of a sales and sales leadership role. So I kind of waited until the right opportunity came around, but it was a combination of opportunity, having a good network and set of supporters, leaders who I'd worked with in the past, who had, branched out and made moves into other companies, and who had made efforts to reach out and try to recruit. So I was very, fortunate in that regard.
And then when you moved on, Nokia Mobility and Samsung, and again, you've had a good track record here of progression and of course, really wonderful companies. So you've had a great career. What have you seen change when it came to job changing as you've progressed in your career? Has it become harder? Has it become easier? What is your thought process as you've gotten into the, leaving Motorola in 2012 and going through your next, 3 companies? kind of what is your perception of a job change, and easier, harder, and how your process has changed?
Yeah, it's in some ways it's easier, and in other ways it gets harder depending on the timing and the network. I mean, the key thing, like you and I have discussed, is keeping your network alive and really investing in it, right? And then you're relying on that in the right way in terms of the engagement and the opportunities that result. Because there is real risk, right? If you go outside your network and you go to an opportunity that is less qualified, up front in terms of what it would be if it was kind of in-house, so to speak, right? So one company I went to, ended up not being a good choice, and it was something that was well outside my network. I did a lot of research on it, but candidly, missed some warning signs about what culture-wise may not be a good fit, right? And I think it reinforces again. I mean, anything involves risk, but if you work hard within your network, I think it's just easier to kind of qualify an opportunity and make a decision that is better balanced from a risk and reward standpoint. I mean, you never know. Sometimes it could have worked out really well, but I think your risk profile goes out and level of difficulty goes up in some ways, securing opportunities that are well outside your network, because it is very difficult to really understand what's going to be like to work in a company until you get there, right? But if you have a network and you have a set of people that you trust that have either worked there or are working there, I think it just helps bring down some of that risk. And it's still, it's still a limited set of tools out there to try to qualify our companies up front. Yes, you can interview, but everyone's on their best behavior when you interview. The people who are interviewing are on their best behavior. It's difficult to really understand what the culture and the values of the company are until you're there and you're living and you're working it and you're seeing how things develop. So in some ways, I was, with a strong network of leaders and recruiters. The Nokia job, moving from Motorola to Nokia was, rigorous in terms of the qualification process, all the interviews and all the research and the personality surveys. That was a fairly straightforward thing. And I knew Rick Corker from the past. I had met him, knew some of the leaders of the leadership team there, and that was a smooth kind of transition. Less so in terms of the mobility thing. That was more mobility searching me out and recruiting me. Moving to Samsung again was more about the network. Having a strong set of customers at Verizon who would recommend me, to Samsung. Knowing some people at Samsung, back to the network again. Having worked with some of them in the past. So from that standpoint, it was an easier process. I think it's more difficult if you don't have an active network and you're not engaged and you haven't cultivated and invested in those relationships. And I think it's very difficult. It's difficult to secure an opportunity. It's difficult to secure the right one because of the difficulty in really knowing what some of these companies are all about until you get there.
So John, you can use a little bit as an example here as our listeners. I've been fortunate to coach and advise, fantastic people like you for many, many years. And, I think the early days of your career as you've progressed, the loyalty of companies and the longevity people stay in companies, I think the thought process of culture and environment and consistency and loyalty and all those kind of things weren't really thought much of back then, right? It kind of just was part of the nature of changing jobs or working for companies. Well, we're in much more volatile world today. Companies are making changes and it's much quicker. And, obviously the roles that you've had in the past and the role that you've transitioned, over the last couple of years, that was a big example of how important is, networking, where, you can't just make choices and be excited about the growth of a company. You have to also be understanding of the people inside and the process of how they work and the people you're going to engage with. Right. Too many people get so excited about the fact, hey, it's a hot company, you go in there, but then you're not going to enjoy the experience. And there's a lot of people like that. You get the people that go to, for example, like to Amazon, and it's an exciting company, but then you get in there and you realize how competitive is in there. Is that going to be really the environment you're going to like? Well, you're not going to know that unless you utilize your network. Just going to a recruiter, a job posting, or someone that doesn't have a relationship. Right. And you're right. It's a very high risk on your being successful with that. And unfortunately, everybody needs to learn that a little bit at some point in their career. And of course you learned it,
Yep.
the hard way, which then emphasized the importance that, you have a big, strong network. Let's start to utilize that to make a good decision on my next career move.
Exactly.
Wouldn't you agree with that?
I fully agree with it. And like some lessons are hard earned. And it was definitely a difficult, experience. One of the companies I went to, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, you learn from it, you grow, you also get stronger as part of that process because you can endure, more hardship probably than you thought you could, and you kind of get through it and you keep it in perspective and you stay strong, and then you look to the next thing to make a better decision tomorrow kind of thing. But it really does point to the value of having a strong network and leveraging that. And like you said, really thinking about your drivers for going to a company. I mean, back to having a strong, impactful role, whichever way you define that, and your ability to, how your role compares to other roles in that company and your ability to have a real impact. And then, I can't emphasize it enough, at least especially at this stage in my career, although I'd argue at any stage, having that company have the right, not just the right performance-oriented, culture and objectives, but the right overall culture and values, especially, if you're working externally with customers, you need to have a company and some support behind you that's grounded, in the right, and has the right behaviors and the right values and mores, and it just matters. It matters in the good times, and it matters most in the difficult times. And it's just something now that I've just placed probably at the top of my list in terms of, all the companies, most companies have, good compensation, good benefits. They've got, developmental opportunities. They have whatever, the similar job descriptions, but it comes right down to culture and values, and, the quick thing around Samsung, one of the values I like, and I've seen them demonstrate it, is, co-prosperity. What does co-prosperity mean? They're not just looking to win on something, looking for whatever the situation is, for both parties to kind of benefit, or multiple parties to benefit, not to have that benefit accrue, one way. And I think it kind of bears out in their policies by and large of their employees, how they treat their customers, their partners, their suppliers. They're looking for long-term kind of sustainable relationships, right? And benefit, for both. And I think it's a strong principle, and it's something that I tried to test very hard before I went over there as well, in terms of seeing that in action and having them give me examples as to how they kind of live that value. As one example. So.
What especially as a successful executive, if you had to advise somebody out there, you've had such a wonderful career on progression. What do you think is the magic behind that? I mean, how have you done so well, have progressed through your career to be this VP and GM of such great companies? I mean, what's that, what advice would you give to people out there to go through that wonderful progression that you've gone through?
I mean, some of it obviously involves a good bit of luck and timing. The wireless industry was growing, so there were great opportunities to take advantage of. But I think part of it is just trying to focus on growth and development and being kind of open to trying some different things out, but being kind of, purpose driven. If you go, there'll be a lot of great opportunities that come up, but what really is the right next thing to do, and having good career coaches as part of your network who can advise you, right? Talking to your parents, talking to friends, colleagues, and kind of vetting these things out. And when you do make that next move, be very purposeful about it. I knew at one point, my wife and I, we wanted to live in Europe at one point and try that experience out, and an expat opportunity opened up. And it was also very well aligned with the growth need in the business, a chance to get a key development experience and starting an organization more or less from scratch, and then driving a new business that the company needed to really make some headway in, based on lack of progress to date. So a lot of good things aligned around that. So that became a very easy decision to make. It's like, it wasn't, how could we do this? It's more like, how could we not do this? Great development opportunity, amazing experience to live in another country. The company needs this. My career will be progressed. There was a promotion that came along with it, expanded roles, great learnings and developments. And so that move became, based on that criteria, a very straightforward thing to do. And it was an amazing adventure, right? And prior to that, I had turned down other roles that could have been, it could have offered a promotion, but just didn't have an obvious, real benefit and growth and development. It would have been an okay move, but does the work really matter? I knew if I went to England and helped get this team launched, that the work would really matter. It mattered whether I showed up at work that day. So you get up in the morning and you have all these demands on you, feeling like what you're doing matters and it's helping, people, your company. your team, makes all the difference. It just, in terms of staying motivated and staying strong and focused and working hard, it just makes life, more enriching. So I think it's being purpose driven, what move you're going to go to next and why, what you're thinking around it, what's your criteria for making that decision, and being honest with yourself. Is this really a good match for me or not? Can I do this every single day? Or is this, going to is the novelty going to likely wear off?
Right.
And I'll be able to invest the kind of passion and energy I need to. I've made good decisions in the past. I've made bad ones. We all make mistakes, but I think that litmus test is, to me, I just keep trying to check myself in that all the time.
So it's kind of jumped a little bit to as a hiring manager. You've managed teams up to 40, 50 people. Obviously, you have a nice big team today at Samsung. Where have you found most of your talent? When you went to hire and grow your teams, add talent, over the last 5-10 years, what has been your process to find talent? What has been your best tools? What has been your best process? What have been your best techniques? How have you found the great people to hire within your teams?
I'd say most of it has been within the network or extensions of the network. Some aided by recruiters. Very, in rare cases, I've hired outside the network because we feel like we've kind of found someone who just brings phenomenal talent into the mix, and you do the research and everything seems to line up in terms of their reputation and their track record. It's real. It's not just resume enhancing stuff. But I kind of find those to be kind of few and far between. I can't say I've had a bad experience hiring people, outside the network, but some cases they haven't been as strong as I was hoping for. But I've had better success kind of leveraging the network and looking at all the people I've worked with in the past and saying, hey, could this person help in this kind of role, based on the skills and the experience we're looking for? Can they bring the right passion and energy into the role? So I'd say, most of it has been within the network or, a slight extension of the network. And then the exception has been, outside the network and just kind of getting introduced to them through recruiters or other contacts who, and saying, this person's just phenomenal. You really need to talk to them, and kind of learning about them.
So as a GM and a hiring manager, what do you think of job boards today in providing talent to you?
Yeah, I wouldn't place much value on them, just because it's, it's such an impersonal kind of tool. It's all about getting introduced and then having somebody, kind of provide an endorsement or a recommendation around somebody, and kind of, having that person, even if you didn't work with them, that person work with them, and they know what they can do, what he or she can do, and what they can bring to the table. So it really comes down to the network again and getting introduced. Even if you don't know that person, you have someone in your network or a recruiter in your network who knows them and can kind of vouch for them, and then that kind of helps them rise to the top.
So posting jobs, it hasn't really been advantageous for you to find talent.
Not really. No, I mean, you get by the time you weed through a lot of the chaff and everything, it rarely provides, I'd say, the talent of exceptional caliber. You get a lot of people who would be okay in the role, but or who are unproven or untested, or who aren't potentially the best fit. Don't maximize the set of attributes you're looking for. So I have some challenges now trying to fill some roles, and it's the recruiters are doing the best role. But a lot of it is I'm going back to my network and pointing them, talk to this person, bring it. That's where we're having the most fruit, and having my managers do that, my leaders, and kind of leveraging their networks. It's been much more productive.
What about how is, obviously we have the phenomenon of job boards over the last 20 years, right? And how that's progressed and at a certain point. And then of course we've had, LinkedIn over the last 15 years. How is, educate me a little bit, educate the audience a little bit. And how do you think LinkedIn has helped you in hiring, or how LinkedIn has helped you when it comes to your own network? Kind of give us your thoughts a little bit of the pros and cons that you've seen with LinkedIn to help you grow your teams and help you in your career.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'd say as my career has grown, my LinkedIn contacts have grown, significantly. I think, like you and I have talked about multiple times, though, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn. Even though I try to be much more selective nowadays, I still have, quite a few people on LinkedIn who I'm really not that close with, and it's a much smaller subset that I would consider my, my real network. So in some cases it's great, working with your customer, you get LinkedIn, you get connected to other connections in your customer group, as an example, that help you develop relationships. So you definitely, you get introduced from your customer to others in their organization or outside, and it helps you expand your network within a customer and grow your customer wiring, so to speak. So that's an advantage. It can help you identify, new people as well to bring into your team or raise other opportunities, but it is highly impersonal, and it's just so large nowadays compared to, to other things like Phello, where it's much more intimate, and you have much stronger affinity with the people you're within your network. So I'd say it's kind of mixed, some good things and some bad.
I mean, where do you see things going? I mean, where, as you move forward, and I'm sure hiring is important to you and staying ahead of the curve. I mean, where do you see, as you've progressed through this 20-year management career and hiring, I mean, where do you see the talent coming from, down the road as we move forward into this, obviously this crazy growth in digital age? Where do you see the hiring coming from? Where do you see the talent coming from? I mean, how do you see things progress over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great questions there. I can't say I can give you, I'm not sure I have a clear view on all of that, but I do think increasingly it's going to be around, from tools that help you leverage your network and expand your network and tap into your network and extensions of it. The younger employees are a challenge to attract in some ways. Where we've had some success is kind of doing where you can do a trial where you can bring people in as a contractor and see how they perform, in a role. And that way you can, qualify them, see their work ethic. We have a number of young people in the team who have come in as contractors, who are doing, kind of, basic work around managing some of our marketing programs, our payments, our budgets, a lot of spreadsheet work, but they're very good at bringing these different tools together, and helping to pull together information in an efficient way. So, and then we're in the process of hiring one of those people now because they perform really well. The team likes them. They have the right attitude, and now they have experience working with us, and it's a lower risk kind of hiring decision for an entry-level position. Internships, are always a good thing as well to tap into new talent. But I think increasingly it's going to be, a set of tools that help you, tap into your network, I believe, and try to find new talent that is, ready to be leveraged. But I'd like, based on your views on that and what you see how you see things evolving here.
Yeah. And like I said, I've talked a lot about the fact that the world's gotten so big. It's kind of overwhelming, right? So,
yeah.
As we progress forward, I think it's very much going to be focused on the people that invest in their networks will get the better jobs.
Yeah.
Again, you're a perfect example. When you utilize your network, you found a great job. When you didn't utilize your network, you went through a painful process. And, everybody's looking for that quality job and the opportunity to be with the company for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And, it's not just about finding a job, it's finding a quality one. And that's really going to be focusing on the people that invest in the networks will get the better jobs. It's just a choice you have to make. If you want to commoditize the process, then you're going to be commoditized, right? So that's a key fact. So as a hiring manager and as an individual that's gone through this process of, having to look for a new role over the past, multiple companies you've changed over the past, 6, 7 years, what's your biggest advice to a job seeker today? What would you tell them to do to be the most successful they can be on looking for a great job and finding that wonderful job like you found at Samsung?
I think, part of it is staying, cultivating your network, and part of that is helping others, right? And making sure that you're investing time in growing your network and developing relationships, and then finding ways to give back and help others when they need it, and kind of building your equity that out in the marketplace, right? If you're working in a company or a set of customers, making sure your customers see that you are helpful, responsive, and you have good customer references, right? And that you're building towards something, right? You're taking on roles again that are impactful, purposeful. You're moving for the right set of reasons. I think one of the things that one of the flags I and others see sometimes is you see people some people have a track record of switching jobs every 1 to 2 years, and they look like hoppers, and even if they were, it was something that they had planned to do. It's kind of like, why are you moving so frequently, right? And if there's not something obvious, an obvious progression that's coming out of that, and there's depth, you start to say, is it just, they just get bored easy, or they just they're not good at selecting a company and or performing, and they kind of move when things get kind of tough. You see a lot of kind of negative questions kind of go into that mix. So I think it's being purposeful about what you want to do, what your goals are, what your longer term goals are, trying to make sure you're proceeding in the right direction. You're building your network, you're helping people, you're establishing a good reputation in the marketplace that can be tested. And you have the right balance of networks between people inside your company, outside, the right recruiters as well, who, can be very helpful in some cases, other cases maybe not as helpful. But being very focused on what you want to do in your career and how you take those steps, and pursuing the right development opportunities. It's a combination of things, but I think it's just trying to build relationships with people, and then really focus on that, not just when you need them, but staying active in that and spending a little bit of time every day, time every week, every month, making sure you're leaning into your network, you're helping people, you're communicating, you're keeping people updated, and you're staying relevant. I mean, this opportunity I had right now, if I think back, I knew the hiring manager already very well, but the customers that recommended me, if I go back a couple of cycles, they were not in the roles they were in now. They were in different types of roles, which at the time, candidly, were less important to the jobs I was in. But I stayed in touch with them because they're good people. I worked with them for years. I was interested in the progress of their careers and what new opportunities they were taking on. So I had lunch with them. I had coffee with them. I would see them a couple of times a year and stay in touch. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, they're in a role now that is much more directly relevant to what I'm looking to do. And I've kept in touch with them. We have a good relationship, and they end up recommending me for a position. And if I hadn't stayed in touch with them, they wouldn't have known that I was looking, and they probably wouldn't have recommended me. So it's a very powerful example about the power of your network and investing in relationships, and it really does pay off. There's a multiplying effect. It pays off over time.
Right. One last question, just curious, and I'm sure my audience would be interested. How big was your network 10 years ago that you consistently communicated with personally compared to the network that you communicate with consistently today personally? How has that changed, and what, roughly numbers wise?
Yeah, and probably 10 years ago was probably like maybe, the people that really mattered, maybe it was like 30 to 50 people. Mm-hmm. It really mattered. I had a broader network, but they weren't people that I was really close to, really work with, really communicate with. Now it's definitely, a couple of hundred, I'd say 300 to 400, 500 people who any given day, week, month I'm interacting with. And some of it comes in peaks of activity, but it's, some of it too is like you and I talked about, just sending out an update, as you start the new year, and engaging with these people. So it's gone up. I'd say it's gone up by, 8 to 10 times. Right. It's probably still not good enough, right? I mean, I'm sure I could do better there, but if I really try to, narrow it down to people that are really meaningful and where I have a lot more interaction with, it's that. So it's gone up a lot, but I think even there, it's I'd like to do a bit better.
Well, John, first off, congratulations on the progression here of your career. You've had a fantastic career. Congratulations on your new job with Samsung, and obviously, building this wonderful process and feeling, I think the thing that I love is that, the process that you went through to find this new role, it's something that makes you feel good, that you're at the right place, at the right time, and you have the right opportunity, and you're here for the right reason. So congratulations on that. I know, obviously the role before that wasn't the best that you went through. So I'm very happy that you found a role that you're happy to be. I'm thankful that you're a part of our show, and you can, I'm sure, provide a lot of advice to people going through the same process that you're going through, because we all do in our careers. I'm going to put your personal website will be attached to this. So if people want to jump on and take a look at, John's personal website, or obviously if you feel there's some relevance that you want to reach out to John, feel free to reach out to him. I'm sure he'll give you some advice. But, I just want to thank you so much for being part of the show, and appreciate all your advice to not only myself, but of course, all the folks that are listening.
No, Kurt, thank you. You've been a tremendous friend and coach and advocate. And I really appreciate all the work you're doing. I mean, you and your team are on the cutting edge here. And you really have, taught me, just how important it is to leverage your network and invest in it. And I think the fellow process is hugely valuable. And I think candidly, there's more I need to do to continue to tap into that and leverage its potential. But I think it's been a great experience. And I sincerely appreciate all the time you've invested in me. I really do. So I wish you and yours.
Well, I'm glad. It's been a fun process. So I appreciate helping you, and